My name is Smiling Observer, and I would like to welcome you to another relaxing, albeit scary, Reddit reading. Now, I have been wanting to do another one of these videos, and I believe that opportunity is now here. In about a month, plus 5 days from this recording, 4 days, it shall be Halloween. And so I want to give you something to think about when you're in bed at night and your scumbag brain decides to remind you of a few things. This first story comes from BW Kitty 2. She is a Redditor, or at least I'm assuming this is a she. I have been wrestling with the idea of submitting this, A, because it is something that I feel so scared about, and B, because I am very new to Reddit. After reading some of these stories, I feel compelled to share. It is a little long, but every time I tell the story, the person I'm telling it to and myself get chills. When I was younger, I went through a phase of being very into Ouija boards. I was always fascinated by the supernatural and was, quite frankly, disappointed that nothing ever happened to me. That changed during a sleepover that I attended in the 3rd grade. Myself, along with 5 or so other girls from my class, were staying the night at the house of another classmate of ours. Nothing of significance happened until late after her parents had gone to bed. We had played light as a feather, stiff as a board, and Bloody Mary, to no avail. So we had essentially given up on our mission to make contact with the beyond until one of the girls, who was my best friend at the time, smiled and pulled something out of her bag. It was a Ouija board. The host of the sleepover was instantly really upset and demanded that it be taken out of the house. We asked her why she was so mad about it, but she didn't really have a reason. She just insisted that we put it away or else her mom would freak out. Her mom was really religious, so we just assumed that it was a superstitious thing. The girl whose board it was would not accept it as a valid reason to stop, so we started to play. No one except me, the girl who the board belonged to, and the sleepover host who really believed. We had asked several questions, and while the pointer did move, they attributed it to me or my best friend moving it. They say that the pointer moves because someone playing is subconsciously moving it. That could have been true, so we decided to ask a question that I knew for sure I only knew the answer to. I initially did not put my hand on the piece to try and prove a point, and the piece started moving immediately. It had spelled 3 correct letters when my friend's mom came into the room. I will never forget the expression on her face. It was one of pure terror and absolute disgust. I went to school with this girl and was one of her best friends from ages 5 to 13. I knew her mother very well, and never before then or since then have I seen her so profoundly upset. She was so livid that she actually called everyone's parents at 2 a.m. insisting that they come and pick us up. Ouija boards usually have some sort of sun, moon, some other contradicting nature type things in the top corners. The one we played with had an open eye on the left corner and a closed eye in the right. When we went back to pack up our stuff, we noticed that it moved from the letter we had left on it, and it was solidly over the open eye. My friend and I looked at each other and decided it would be best not to share that with anyone else, so as to not cause any unnecessary panic. When school started on the next Monday, we all ran up to the host asking what had happened and why her mom got so upset. She was visibly shaken and did not want to talk about it. After being goaded all day by everyone who had attended the sleepover, she finally cracked. The story went that when her mom was in high school, she had this group of friends that she hung around with pretty much constantly. 2 members of the group were dating. One day, when they were juniors, they decided to play with the Ouija board. They also decided to ask the one question that you're not supposed to ask. When am I going to die? One by one, they each took turns asking this, and the board gave them all answers. Curiously, the couple both got the same date. For a while, everyone kept the dates in their back of their minds, but as the years went on with no death, they lost their impact. The couple stayed together throughout college, and one weekend the boyfriend took his girlfriend on a trip with the intention of proposing to her. They were both murdered. A murder that has gone unsolved on a day that the board had predicted they would both die. Now, I have no way of verifying the authenticity of her story, but based on both the reaction of my friend's mom and the manner with which my friend retold the story to us, I have no doubts in my mind that it is true. Now, it has been 15 years since this happened, and nothing has happened in regards to the board resting on the open eye. But I refuse to participate in Ouija boards, and I strongly urge anyone who expresses interest not to as well. Well, that was interesting. The next story comes from Vivacious. So I have my own little story about Ouija boards. When I was 5, I found out we had one, and I asked my dad if we could play it. And then both he and my mom started going on about how the house would burn down if we did. And so they got rid of the board, and I didn't ask about it again. Then, when I was 11, I met this girl who told me she makes Ouija boards. Like she just carved into solid wood and used a shot glass, but I wanted to try it. So me and a couple of friends decided to try the Ouija board and stay at the girl's house. She carved it out playing it by 1 a.m. Then she said something that made me a bit psyched out. If it says anything bad, we say goodbye. My sister sees spirits, and we don't want an evil one bothering her. I figured she was just scaring us, so I didn't really stop me from playing. We did the usual, and asking any spirits were willing to communicate. It would move towards yes, and then stop. This went on for a few minutes, so we just said goodbye, and it slowly made its way there. We took a break, and then tried to play again. This time was completely different. We had gotten a spirit that was faster at moving, and when we asked the name, it spelled out Lucifer. We all just kinda looked up at each other, then asked if it was a good spirit. It said no, so we asked if it was evil, and it said yes. Everyone seemed to pull their hands back then, except for one girl who hesitated, then realized she was the only one touching it. She started crying. We had to say goodbye, so we resumed. As soon as our hands touched the shot glass, this chick's dog started barking. We said goodbye, trying to rush it, but it kept going to no. It took a few minutes for it to finally go to goodbye, and it scared the snot out of me. As soon as it did, the dog stopped barking. Here's the weirdest part though. My friend, who made the board, checked her phone. She had 2 voicemails and no missed calls. She had the tiny flip phone that was really popular in 2007, and she was too scared to listen to the voicemails, so I listened. The first voicemail sounded like someone was standing outside in the wind, or with traffic rushing behind them. Then a voice came on and said, "Thank you for your time. Feeling rushed. Goodbye." Then it clicked off. The next one started out with, "Hello?" in a small voice. Not like a child, but more like a whisper. And then it said, "You want to know a secret? I'm in." I don't know what it said after that because something was knocked over in the only open bedroom, and I dropped the phone. We checked the phone the next morning and the voicemails were gone. Not to mention that something kept calling and asking for me while she was making it. And when I finally talked to the person, they said something like, "You're going to die tonight. I'll make sure of it." So I just said, "Come and get me." Then stuff got weird. I was still on the phone, looking out the window, and it said, "You'll know when it's me when you see someone in a white shirt." Then the stupid kid across the street goes walking past his living room window in a white t-shirt. I was more scared of that than the Ouija board. Haha. I've had a lot of creepy stuff happen to me. I used to live in this house that was built in the 50s. It was a 3-bedroom, 2 bathrooms. A 3-bedroom, 2 bathrooms. An added-on room. It didn't have very good ventilation. It had its own furnace though, so my brother took that as his room. Now, I used to freak out over everything. I was scared of the dark. And one night I had a friend over. We were about 10 at the time and I couldn't sleep. So I went to watch South Park. I told my friend if she wanted to come watch to just close the door behind her so the dogs didn't get it. They pee while we weren't there. I was in the living room for about 10 minutes when I heard her calling my name. So I paused South Park and asked if she was coming. She got quiet and said, no. Then asked what I was doing. All of a sudden, my 3 dogs go running to my room, barking their heads off. So I followed, and when I got to my room, the door was wide open. I was a little upset and said, I thought I told you to close the door if you left. My friend said, very scared, I've gotten out of bed. I haven't gotten out of bed. I flicked on a light and my dogs just started at my closet. The door was cracked open, but only a little. And I had stuff in there, so it wasn't like somebody could stand in there without being heard. So I looked at my friend who was still in my bed, her eyes wide, fixed on the side of my room with the closet. I asked what happened. And then when she told me what happened, I lost it. This is what she said. I was trying to sleep and I heard the door open. There was someone standing there, taller than me. So I thought it was you. Then I heard your voice and it was quiet. So I thought you were talking low. They were just standing there, so I said your name. And then you asked if I was coming to watch South Park. Then the dog started barking, and whoever it was walking into the room and towards the closet. We decided to sleep in my living room after that. This also happened at the house that was built in the 50s. We had an above ground pool, and me and my friends decided to go skinny dipping. We were like 11, and it was around midnight. So we were just swimming around quietly, making a whirlpool. It was just me and 2 girls, and one of them got out and started walking around the side trying to balance. We didn't have the light on in the backyard, but you could see her glowing from the street light on the other side of the fence. And half the water was in shadow, so we didn't really see anything weird. Anyway, she got about 3/4 of the way around the pool when she fell in. And my other friend, I'll call her Casey, were on the other side of the pool, and she flops out of the water and yells angrily, "Very funny, guys, don't pull me in." Casey and I just kind of stood there for a minute wondering if she was joking with us. So she came over and suddenly we heard a splash behind her. In the shadows we could see what looked like a gray hand sinking back into the water. And we flipped out and climbed out the pool, nearly falling on our faces in the process. We got our towels and froze when we heard someone swimming around. You could see someone in the pool. We ran inside and never went swimming at night again. Not really. Now, at this point, I'm going to interject this. She was responding to people on Reddit asking her questions. So I only copied what she said, not what everyone asked her. So I'm going to read what she responded, even though you don't know the question. Not really. The people who lived in it before were elderly. They didn't die in the place, though. I used to make up stories about these metal bars on our back porch. My brother would use one for pull-ups, but one of them was bent in the middle, as if something was too heavy and hang there. I would say someone killed their family and hung the bodies up there. I was a twisted child. Creepy, I must say. Also weird thing about this house was that we had no next door neighbors. Well, there were people living in every house on the street, but on every side of our house was an empty lot. Then there were houses after the lots, at least 200 feet away. I always thought it was weird that we were the only house like that. Also, the back patio was painted red, and when the paint started chipping away, it had these weird stains. I never figured out what they were. One cool thing is we had a secret door on our back fence. One of the doors had hinges and a latch, so you could easily get into the lot behind our house. We also had a lot of fruit trees, which mostly pomegranate ones. There was also a giant honeysuckle bush in the corner of the yard, and I was pretty sure something hid in there at night and watched us. We used to play a lot of games in the dark in my yard. Interesting. I'm sure a lot of families played a lot of games. I know I did with my cousins. We used to stand in the mirror in the dark and say Bloody Mary over and over again. Nothing ever happened, and I guess for my sake, I'm glad nothing did. Now, this next story is called The Vortex, a true Ouija board story. Part 1, no less. And it was posted by Imperfect Pragmatism and No Sleep. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading for you. And I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to tell you about a time when I played with the Ouija board and all hell broke loose. But this is not the only paranormal experience that I have had. This is simply the worst and most striking of them all. I had been having paranormal experiences since I was a child. I'm going to tell you this story. Then I'm going to give an open-minded analysis of these experiences. The reason for this is that I suffered from hauntings for 25 years. Then it simply stopped, bar one experience a few months ago, and it happened in a very simple way. I contacted no paranormal groups or priests or spiritualists or white witches. There were no rituals or burning of sage. I need to give you a bit of background about myself, so I will paint a quick picture here. I'm English. I grew up in a 1980s council house kid in a poor industrial town. My dad was a drug dealer and a major person, a major bad person. My mom worked 3 jobs to keep the house going. I was a straight A student until I moved in with my father at the age of 12. I got into drugs and drink and stopped going to school. I dated men like my father. I had worked very little in my many years. I I started dealing like my father. I have seen and been in some very counterculture, sub-counterculture there is in this town. I have died twice, had guns pointed at me, seen people stabbed, and so forth. All through these years, as I drifted from place to place, I would experience hauntings. The first experiences I had were my childhood home, and most people who came to that house would experience something there. My mom had an interest in unexplained things and a few books on it. Anyone remember the original Unexplained books? I guess that would have set me up for an interest in it too, since we were being haunted. This is where the Ouija board story comes in. When I was living with my dad, he was hardly ever there. He would be out till the early hours of the morning. Oh, Dad and I lived in a small flat. Well, one night at about 11 p.m. on a Friday night, my best friend, let's call him Robert, and I were sitting at the dining table. We were talking about the hauntings I experienced at my childhood home, and we got the idea to do a Ouija board. We drew one out with a paper, with A starting on the left hand, bottom corner, and Z ending in the right hand corner, bottom corner. 1 through 9 across the bottom, and yes and no in the center, with goodbye underneath. We use a 50-pound piece of paper, a 50-pound piece as a pointer. After a little giggle and teasing we both made to touch the pointer, this is what happened next. Robert is left-handed. He put his left forefinger on the pointer. I am right-handed. I put my right finger on the pointer. This instant that we both did, I felt like something swirling its way up the vein of my left hand. I snatched my right hand away to grab at my left. Robert had done the same thing at the same instant with his hand. We should have stopped doing it right then, right there, but we didn't. I guess we were compelled to. So we both put our fingers back on our pointers, and it didn't move. We're doing the obligatory, is anyone there? Anyone wants to talk to us? Still nothing. Then very slowly it started to move. It felt as though my finger was actually repelling off of the pointer, like two magnets would rather than I was touching it. It started to move in a slow circle, then got faster and faster. Finally I said, "Who is this?" BQ, it answered. "Are those your initials?" "Yes." "So what is your name?" BQ. "But those are your initials." "What is?" "Yes," interrupting. Here we started to mock a little. Whoops, and it started to swirl around the board again. "Okay, what is your name?" BQ. "I know it's BQ. You said it was your initials, though. What is your name?" "Robert." "Is it Ben?" The pointer then moved to goodbye and would not move again. We burned that Ouija. I know now. I let it fly out of the flat window. We found the experience weird and disappointing, and move on to other teenage concerns. And then we went to bed. And things went from mildly creepy to terrifying. In my room, we had a fold-out bed set up for Robert beside my bed. As we settled into our respective beds, a penny dropped in my wardrobe and slowly spun to a stop. We looked at each other. You hear that, Rob? Yeah. We waited, and nothing. It must have slipped out of a pocket, I said. I then turned out the light. As I lay there in the dark with my eyes closed, I could see the game Mario as if I were playing it. You know, when you're playing a game so long, then you go to bed and you still see it in your eyes. But the more I watched it, the more horrific it started to look. Then I started seeing other horrible stuff. I can't remember, sorry. Into the dark I said, Rob, were you still awake? Yes. I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see something horrible. What he said next shocked me. Me too. So then I opened my eyes and saw the weirdest thing I have ever seen in my life. On the wall, opposite the foot of my bed, high up where the wall meets the ceiling, was a green swirl. You saw that right, a green swirl. It was doing a luminous, swirly green thing and slowly moving along the wall, leftwards. I knew it was coming towards me. Robert, turn on the light. Please, turn on the light. He wouldn't answer me. I could hear him breathing hard. Another penny dropped inside the cupboard. The swirl was now on the wall, far end of the wall where my bed was pushed up against. Turn on the light. Turn on the light, I begged. The swirl was closer. Robert, the light, the light. All the time I was screaming this. I'm not taking my eyes off of this thing. It is now above me. It dripped onto me. I let out a piercing scream and Robert jumped up and switched on the light. Now I had gotten into bed with the dressing gown on, and it was the sleeve of this that this ecto stuff dripped on. I tore it off the moment the lights were turned on. Why didn't you turn on the light? I was shaking from head to foot, and I mean shaking. I could see every hair standing on end on my body, and the ones on the back of my neck were kind of dancing around. Because when I went to, he replied, a skeletal arm came out of the alcove, a little corridor into my room where the switch is. I only put the light on because I have never heard anyone scream like that before, and it scared me more. We stayed up till it was light after that, but that is not where it ends. The hauntings went on for another 3 years at that level. I'll end it here for now and finish making my dinner. If you liked it, I will write more. Edit. I need to point out that I was sober at this point. I didn't corrupt until another year after this experience. Wow. This was submitted 3 years ago by Imperfect Pragmatism. And if you're wondering, I am kind of freaking out a little bit by some of these stories. But I'll continue. This was part 2. After Robert and I slept in well into the afternoon, we got up and went out. We didn't discuss it. It wasn't at the forefront of our minds even. I don't know why. It wouldn't be. Excuse me. It just wasn't. We did normal teenage things until the evening. When I returned home, my dad was back and drunk. I went to my room. I was watching Beavis and Butthead and doodling cartoons of Beavis and Butthead, and when another penny dropped in my cupboard, I sat there on my bed looking at my closet wardrobe, listening to this penny spin to a stop. My heart was beating fast, and I was recalling the night before's incident. After I calmed a little, I went to my wardrobe and opened it up. There is no way any pennies could have fallen from any pockets into the wardrobe floor. Like most teenagers, my wardrobe is stuffed with things. If a penny had dropped, then it would have made no sound. But yet, I had heard this. I closed the wardrobe and sat back on my bed. I have to add that my room was painted back black. It was a very dark bedroom because of that. Give me a break, I was being grungy. Despite this, I saw an apparition. A black column-shaped thing stood in the center of the room, and it zipped to the wall, and it just kept racing around the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Zip, 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 then gone. The room got darker and colder. I then left the room and sat and watched TV with my dad. The rest of the night passed without incident. Upon seeing Robert the next day, we discussed the events of that night, and we made plans for him to stay again at the weekend so that we could be together and see if anything would happen again. Nothing happened to me during the week leading to the staying over. Friday evening, Robert and I are alone in the flat. We are in the kitchen, and I am making burgers and rocket fuel coffees. I was teasing Robert about his confession that he liked Coca-Cola milkshakes, and the microwave started beeping over and over. Thought nothing of it and turned it off at the mains to shut it up. As I was plating up our burgers, I instructed Robert to go into the bedroom and get some videos to watch. Well, as I was fussing in the living room, setting salt and pepper, coffees and burgers on the coffee table, I hear a thump. Robert comes staggering out of the bedroom. He had seen what we come to call the black thing rush at him as soon as he opened the door. It went through him, knocking the wind out of him. Again, after the initial shock, we went into the room together, got the videos, and went back to our business. No further events occurred that night. One afternoon, about a week or so later, we were sitting in my room when again, a penny dropped inside my cupboard. If it keeps this up, I'll be rich at this rate, I joked. Then it sounded like a whole handful of pennies being dropped into the wardrobe floor. I didn't check the cupboard. I knew the pennies would be there. Again, no further events happened. Then, one night I was drooping off to sleep. I felt my body do that drop that it does when your consciousness is dropped down a few gears into alert yet relaxed state. The covers were yanked off me and whipped across the floor. Shaking, I pulled the corner of the fitted sheet up. I cocooned myself into it and curled into a ball. There I shivered until I fell into exhausted sleep. For about a week, I experienced nothing else until I had the door snatched out of my hands. It was late one night. I was watching TV in the dark. I had hung a cardigan on the back of the sofa some time ago, and there it had stayed for many hours until it just whipped off the sofa. I ignored this, shaking slightly. I behaved flippantly and flipped the channels as though nothing had occurred. As I was doing this, I saw a small blonde-haired boy sitting cross-legged underneath the TV, right underneath. He was watching me, not the TV. There, and then gone in seconds. This all made me so nervous, I wanted to pee. I held onto the wee until my bladder was so painful, it was either pee myself in the sofa or get up and go to the toilet. I got up and I tugged at the door leading to the bedrooms and bathroom. It wouldn't budge. I just stubbornly held onto it, to its door frame. Oh, for crying out loud, I cried out and the door gave way, meaning that I elbowed myself roughly right into my full bladder. It wasn't until I was sitting on the toilet that I realized that I had seen a gap in the door jamb 3 times, and the door had slammed back 3 times before I had sworn. Now there is a large gap in my memory about the hauntings. I next remember events at the age of 21. My dad left me on my own in the house to go to America to visit my aunt. He was gone for 2 months. Me, myself, and my entirety was almost destroyed at that time. The hauntings had died down, but I guess, and when my dad left me in the house on my own, I was prime game. 3 nights after my dad had left, I was eating homemade pie and mashed dinner. I was watching Only Fools and Horses and squashing peas with my fork. I remember this viscerally. As I was mashing the peas, this rhyme was rolling around in my mind. I coat my peas with honey. I've done it all my life. It makes the peas taste funny, but it keeps them on the knife. Ping, the sound of a bulb blowing, namely in the kitchen. I had turned the light off. My dad is anal about doors and lights. As I stood up a little perplexed and a little bit inside, the microwave started its old familiar beeping. I sat back down and thought, I am ignoring this. But as I sat there, this beeping sound, as though it had a pattern, it sounded just like the rhyme I had been singing in my head. As soon as this occurred to me, the beeping stopped. My exact thought, I remember, was, blank, me, here we go. That night, I was watching TV with the light off, and I saw a ball of light just poof, appear on the floor beside the TV. It floated upwards in a straight path and disappeared into the ceiling. I would say it was the 6 of a 5-penny piece, not very bright, and left a trail of light in its wake. Another one whizzed along the floor and under my sofa. I went to bed and slept with the lights on. I find this next bit hard to believe, yet not only because it seems so far out or nutso, but because it was so real to me. My neurological brain creates a dissonance with it. I hadn't fallen asleep. I know I hadn't. I was too scared to. I could feel something there. The next thing I know, I can hear a whoom, 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 vroom sound. It started faint at first, just a bassy irritation, and then it started to fill the room. The next thing I know, I am on the ceiling. I am facing the bed, and there am I in the bed too. I feel like I am stuck, but I can turn my head. I can feel the chipboard in the papered ceiling. I can just about brush my fingers along the ceiling. I felt dust crumble down. The paper felt so dry. I felt as though I was magnetized to the ceiling. I couldn't move, yet I could feel the textures of the ceiling, feel the warmth of the rising heat. I could hear the pipes ticking away in the loft. I looked down at myself. Every muscle was rippling. My hair was dark and dreaded with sweat. I may have to stop in a bit. My heart is racing here. I was whiter than white. I screamed out. No sound came out of me except the whistling hiss. My mouth felt as though it had opened a mile wide to deliver a scream that never came. I struggled and struggled to gain control of the body I had at that time. I woke up falling to the floor. My skin was ice cold and soaking with sweat. You could actually slew it off of my skin. The lights were off. Again, I was shaking in that way that is hard to describe. Every bit of you sings, even your marrow. For 4 days I refused to sleep. It wrecked me. It made no difference. For some reason, the living room was safer. I camped out there and watched TV. Nothing but TV. I had only a few channels, and they repeated not only the same shows daily, but hourly. I began to think in a time loop. I didn't know what was about. I had to give in. I had to sleep. This time, I was lullied into a false sense of security. There was no vroom sound. It was simply tugged back out of my body and left to hang on the wall behind my headboard. I was simply tugged back out of my body and left to hang on the wall behind my headboard. My head was pulled uncomfortably up into the ceiling. I felt like someone had me up under their arms again. I struggled as I watched my body rippling. Again, I woke up soaked and cold as before. I was plagued like that whenever I was alone. I was fine if someone was staying over. I threw lots of parties so that I didn't have to be alone. The flat got wrecked. Mad wasn't happy. Aside now, rather than try to write years and years worth of these experiences, stories like this, I will list them. But I have to stop for now because despite a more skeptical, open-minded, science-based approach to these experiences, they still make me feel uncomfortable because they were so visceral and in part unexplainable to me at the time. I remember how I felt at the time, and it's not a nice feeling. See you guys soon. I need a ciggy. Addendum. Recalling and writing all of this has been strange. I say I remember little, but I envision a bucket thrown down a deep, deep, dark well. As it slowly rattles and drags its way back up, I recall things. If you were to ask me how many experiences I've had, I would waggle my fingers and say, this many. If you were to ask me how many terrible things have happened in my life, I would do the same. It makes me wonder, Which one was the cause? Which the symptom? I am struggling at the moment between believing and disbelieving. I have no idea why. I guess I will find out as I draw to a conclusion here. I won't be writing anymore tonight. I'm going to bed to think about how to arrange what I am saying succinctly. I had swung in life from a firm believer into an utter reductionist, and now I am standing at a crossroads. Formulating your thinking is difficult when you're at that kind of a nexus. Good night, no sleep. Now the following is a conversation between Redditors, the Sumo, and the author of everything I just read to you, Imperfect Pragmatism. The Sumo. Every bit of you sings, even your marrow. I was visibly shaking by that line. Imperfect Pragmatism. It is very scary time back then. I had experienced hauntings before this, but those hauntings were there already. I hadn't invited them, like I did with the Ouija at my dad's house. I had never seen or felt anything anywhere near what I did at that time. I felt like this ghost wanted my body. I didn't want it to have it. Where would I go? What would happen to me? What if it did evil things to people as me? I started having out-of-body experiences around that time that were too very real too. I wouldn't float like most people. I would have my feet on the ground and be able to touch things. Though I could feel the astral body I had, I couldn't see it. My effect from the outside world would be minimal. If my door was closed, I was stuck in the room. This was frightening, and when haunting occurred, I wouldn't know if this experience was coming from that one that was an attempted body snatcher or not. Trying to fight something unseen with more tricks up their sleeves than you have causes every fiber of your body to shake and vibrate. You can thump a person, shout at them, call the police on them to stop them bullying you. What you do is something that you can alter your perception, but you cannot see it. What can you do to something that can alter your perception, but you cannot see it? I am very thankful every day that I am now free from that type of fear. Lee Ninja Girl asks, or says, often Ouija board you give spirits access to you. That shooting feel was possibly the spirit connecting with you. I'm surprised you weren't still being haunted. Imperfect Pragmatism responded, well, there was one incident recently. I plan to talk about that towards the end of my post, but spiritually, mentally, and socially, I am in a different place. My partner and I are soul pods, and with that, our domain is pretty impenetrable. The thing is, my mom had told me to never play with a Ouija. I didn't know why I didn't listen to her advice. I usually did. I will never mess with them again, whether I hold certain beliefs or not. Lit Ninja Girl. That's pretty neat. I love the paranormal. It's always been in my life. I've seen a lot of stuff relating to it. Things similar to this, actually. Still, a Ouija board opens you up to other things, whether you mean to or not. I've never used one, nor do I ever intend on it. Imperfect Pragmatism responds, that's good. I don't know how to quantify my experiences yet, But I have learned over the years that nothing can be discounted in this world. Everything is possible. Nothing should be denied. But you also need a healthy mind and heart to deal with it. I didn't for all those years. And there you have it. Another scary Reddit reading by a Smiling Observer. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you get many tingles from it. I hope it scares you in a entertaining way, but simultaneously, I hope it acts as a warning to you to not play with Ouija boards. A lot of what I've read seems to give the same advice. When you play with a Ouija board, you open yourself up. And what you open yourself up to is to evil spirits. They feed off of your energy. They feed off of you. And you don't want to be that person that has that awful experience. You just don't want to be that person. So, but also, here's the kicker. If evil is that real and that present with humankind, then how real is God? That should tell us that he's very real and very present with mankind. Unfortunately, that part of us that dwells on this physical plane, that part of us that wants to experience only the physical things of life, we kind of shy away from the things of God. But if we'll just wake up for the moment and open ourselves to God rather than things of the earth and to these spiritual things that really, if you read the Bible, God forbids us from dabbling with, we'll see that we can have a real and meaningful connection with God. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to preach to you guys because at the end of the day, you have to make your choice. But I would urge you, don't choose the Ouija board. Don't choose the dark side, so to speak. Master Yoda said the dark side is easier, it's quicker, more powerful. And I guess to whatever degree, if you're looking at it from a philosophical point of view, he's right. But I would akin it to robbing people and selling drugs. You're still making money and you can make it quick and fast. But look at the lives you ruin in their wake. As opposed to someone who works hard and saves their money and puts God first and puts their best foot forward to do what's right. They may not come up as quickly, but if they're patient and they work hard, when they do come up, they come up. So you think about that, and I hope you guys have a happy and safe Halloween, and I look forward to doing more readings for you, and maybe even doing who knows what else. We'll wait and see. Okay?